Today's meeting of the Neighborhood and Affordable Housing Advisory Board is called to order on May 10th, 2022. Welcome, everyone. Agendas of today's meeting are on the wall at the entrance to chambers. Please remember to turn off your cell phones. To ensure a complete record of the board's action, we ask that each individual wishing to speak clearly state your name and spell your last name for the clerk. I will ask the board members to introduce themselves and identify the fields that they each represent. We're going to start with Ms. Field.
Robin Field, mortgage.
Farmer Santiago for the people.
Kevin Schnaut representing the nonprofit industry.
Pete Scalia, homeless.
Lindsay Dacus Harrison, real estate.
And I am your board chair, Camille Hepting. I represent employers in Clearwater. So our item 2.1 is approval of the minutes for the board's April 12th, 2022 meeting. May I have a motion to approve item 2.1?
I'll set the motion.
In a second.
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, minutes are approved. Item 3 is citizens to be heard regarding items not on the agenda. Is there anyone here to speak to items not on today's agenda? All right, we'll move on to the next item. 4.1, approve staff recommended funding allocation among applicants for fiscal year 22-23 Community Development Block Grant Funding.
Thank you. Chuck Lane, Assistant Director, Economic Development Housing Department. Busy time of year for us. We're in the middle of our annual action plan, and we have some amendments that we're bringing forward. Morning, Denise. All right. So first item, we're going to talk about the funding allocations. So this is part of our annual action plan. This is a step in the process. Let's see. So as we talked about last week, we put out a notice of funding availability back in February, and we opened up an application process for 30 days, for people to apply for CDBG funding, right? This is really primarily CDBG. The home funding is for housing. That's more of a, as projects come forward basis. So that's really what this project is about. Next week, I'll be asking the board to recommend council approval of the annual action plan, and that will include our entire budget, the home, even the SHIP. The SHIP money isn't part of our annual action plan, but it's kind of an opportunity for us to establish our budget at a point in time every year. So, and you get to see the whole picture as well. So what we're doing today is the CDBG stuff. So we had a number of applications, mostly public facilities and public services, and I think you can you see it on the screen?
Yeah.
In front of you? Okay. So we had a number of public facilities applications. Those are at the top of the screen. Most of them we are using CDBG entitlement to fund them. There are 2 projects we're using CDBG CV, which is coronavirus funding. Those projects are for, as you can see, they're for the child care, our club child care. There's 2 facilities they have. They're going to make improvements to their HVAC system to kill the coronavirus as it comes through the system. So good project there. And you see our regular partners on that screen as well for public facilities. Public services, this is really the most important aspect of our application process, because this is where the competition comes in. So with public services, we're allowed to spend 15% of our allocation, okay? Now, we don't know what our allocation is right now. We haven't been told by HUD. Usually we have that information by now. Should be coming out any day, any week now. We should be getting it. I hope we get it before our next meeting. And that's going to change the numbers a little bit. It won't change the public facilities numbers because those are fully funded, okay? But the public service applications, it's going to change them because I believe all of these groups asked for more funding than they were allowed, okay? Our maximum ask is $25,000. We very rarely are able to fund that much. I'm going to show you real quickly how we come up with our allocations. So the public service projects, we asked the technical review committee, comprised of, I believe, 4 people. Mr. Schnaut was on that committee. So they review all the applications and score them. And not just the public services, but all of them. But the public services is really where it becomes important. So you can see on the screen our anticipated allocation, which at this point, without an allocation for next year, we go by last year's number, which was $922,606 for CDBG. Okay, so that's what we're using for the sake of putting these numbers together. So 15% of that is $138,000. And what we do is we take $30,000 off the top of that for home buyer education, and that's being distributed to two different groups. Okay, so the remaining funds is $108,000 to be distributed among 8 applications that are in the competition for this funding. So the top 3 scores are receiving 45% of the funding, which is $48,777, so $16,259 per. And then you can see the math for the remaining groups. So it's a very fair, competitive process. It's kind of predetermined. We always do this 3-tier funding level. It can change a little bit with the numbers depending on how many, if there's 8, 9, 10. But this is how we came up with the numbers. So we want to be very transparent about that. Now we anticipate our allocation to go up, and we'll keep the set percentages the same, but obviously the numbers, the allocations will change. So hopefully we have that information again by next month, and I can give that all to you. Where's my cursor?
Chuck, would that 30,000 for homebuyer educations change as well, or would that stay at 30,000 and then basically make the rest change?
We'll keep that there. We'll
Okay.
keep the 30,000 there. It's very rarely that the groups spend all of the $15,000. They get close.
Okay.
If they do spend it, and there are others that aren't spending their full public service allotment, we can steal from Peter, pay Paul,
Okay.
that kind of thing.
Okay.
But the $15,000 per organization seems to work.
Okay.
So we're going to stick with that.
Excellent.
And then, so you can see down, that's the education counseling, and it includes classes and also one-on-one counseling. So very important program. It's really integral with our DPA program as well, our down payment assistance program. The home ARP stuff you see at the bottom of the page and top of this page, and also the CDBG CV, we'll be talking about that in the next item. So we'll skip past that. And then, of course, we have our administration, CDBG, home ARP, CDBG CV. CV, of course, is the CDBG component for coronavirus, to respond to coronavirus. And these are all percentages that we're allowed through the funding source. And then lastly, we have economic development activities. We have micro enterprise, small business support. We have 2 groups that we've worked with for a number of years now that do very well in that area, and it's Prospera and Tampa Bay Black Business Investment Corporation. So we're going to continue to partner with them, and you can see the total. What I've done here is I've just shown CDBG, home ARP, and CV. That's all I've done. Next week you'll see a much broader spreadsheet with all of the funding sources. So that's the CDBG breakout. I'll take any questions at this time, please.
Just a clarification, some of these CDBG CV funds have already been expended, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll go into more detail on the next item, where we're at with that.
Any other questions for Chuck? Chuck, may I ask what the dollar amounts that are across from administration are used for? So there's 3 line items for under admin, right?
Yep, we're allowed to use 20% for CDBG, 15% for home ARP, and I believe 20% for CDBG CV. And those funds are used to pay our salaries.
Okay.
We also have consulting services that we use to pay those funds. Sometimes we run into a cost that's ineligible under the program. We can use admin at times to pay that. So it's a matter of convenience, but it also pays staff salaries so we can continue to run these programs.
Okay. Excellent. All right. Okay, we already did this. Anyone from the public wish to comment on this item? All right. May I have a motion to approve item 4.1?
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, motion carries. Item 4.2 is recommend City Council approval of the substantial amendment to the 2021-2022 Annual Action Plan. And that is you again, Chuck.
Yes. So last year we were awarded $1,637,567 for home ARP money. ARP being, of course, American Rescue Plan. So this is really the first allocation we've seen come from the Treasury in response to COVID that doesn't actually require a COVID connection. It doesn't require a connection to, an income loss or anything like that. Rather, this program requires that we serve a qualified population. And that qualified population is people that are either homeless or are imminently facing the threat of becoming homeless and are below 30 and 50% of area median income. So that's specifically what this is. Now, home is typically housing. It's about units, how many units you can produce, how many units you can preserve, rehabilitate. This really has very little to do with that. This is about serving populations. A lot of the money you'll see is funding public services. That is something that home is not able to do. The regular home allocation is not able to do. So to create a home ARP allocation plan, we need to do a substantial amendment to our current annual action plan, right? So in doing that, if we're going to open up that substantial amendment, what we wanted to do is to clean up our CDBG money and reprogram some of that money that's not being spent, get that budget, where it is right now so it's accurate. So we included a CDBG reprogramming as well that I'll show you, okay? So that's where we're at now. Home ARP required a 15-day public comment period. We're doing a 30-day public comment period because we're including the CDBG money. So if it was just a home ARP, we could do a reduced public comment period. We're in that public comment period now. It started on May 4th and it's ending on June 2nd. And on June 2nd, I'll be asking City Council to approve that plan, and then we can put the contracts into place and get the money spent. Okay. So what we were required to do is meet with and consult with certain organizations to really get the right feedback we needed and how we're going to allocate this money. So what you can see on the screen, the first three, of course, City of Clearwater, the NAHAB board, our department. Obviously, those three organizations, if you will, are very well embedded in this process. So the others, you can see Pinellas Homeless Leadership Alliance, we call HLA. They're really the guiding organization when it comes to all issues homeless in our county. The Salvation Army, very strong player in the field as well, obviously. HEP, we all know their role. Directions for Living. We had to have some child care folks in on that discussion. The Directions for Living again. Hope Villages of America, we had to have folks in the room that were involved in domestic violence, in assisting victims of domestic violence. We had to have a public housing organization in the room, that was Clearwater Housing Authority, and other nonprofits as well, Pinellas Community Foundation, Blue Sky Communities. They represented housing for low-income folks, for the qualifying population. Pinellas Opportunity Council, Intercultural Advocacy Institute, and Gulf Coast Legal Services. We had a group call, and it was a funding workshop is what we called it, and all of these organizations were represented on that call. It was a Zoom call. And I thought it was very productive. It was a great discussion. Our consultant led that discussion, and I thought we got a lot out of it. And again, it was required by the funding source. And then, let's see. And then we went through a needs analysis. What you see there is a public participation on the screen, and what that really is our public comment period. And this as a public meeting, and June 2nd City Council meeting as a public meeting for people to give us input. So that's obviously a requirement. Whenever we use federal funds, that's always a requirement. But what our consultant did as well is they created a needs assessment and gap analysis, and that was very productive. They're kind of limited with the data they can use. HUD's a little strange with that, but they went through that analysis. This table is a little bit misleading because it's a table that's kind of pre-populated by HUD. The grayed out fields, you cannot enter data into them. So it's a little, I think it's misleading and it's not very helpful to look at that. But it is what it is. And then let's see. So what they came up with is the needs analysis really identified 4 major needs that are kind of consistent with our consolidated plan and the work we do. And those needs are the homeless population, affordable housing development, production of new rental units, that's one. Facility services for victims of domestic violence, that's another. rental assistance, and homeless prevention through diversion services, utility assistance, move-in assistance. So our program, what you'll see, really it covers three of those needs that are identified. We didn't have a program that identified domestic violence, victims of domestic violence. So we'll go to our table here. Oh, that didn't work. Or did it? There it is. So this again is misleading as well. It says $623,000 is being spent on TBRA, which is tenant-based rental assistance. That was the guidance we got from our HUD rep to capture all of the public service money in this line item. I don't know why, but that's why we did that. The remainder of the funds are going towards Blue Sky Community. It's called Blue Dolphin is the name of the project. It's an affordable housing tax credit project that's going to happen in our downtown. It's a 9% tax credit project. This funding will go towards 5 of the units, and those units will be there to they will serve people that meet the qualifying population, that are in that population. So they have to be very careful about who they work with to select those tenants. And when those tenants move on, they'll have to continue to use those units for that purpose. So that's what that project is all about. And then, let's see, where are we? Oh, here are the projects, and that's Blue Sky Community. Hope Villages of America, really that's tenant-based rental assistance, and that's really targeted to those that are exiting Grace House into more permanent housing. Pinellas Opportunity Council, really that's mostly mortgage assistance, utilities assistance, fuel costs, things like that, for people that are facing the imminent threat of being homeless. HEP, they're using the funds to kind of augment their family transition program, and it's to help those folks, help families with minor children, receive shelter and services, and then at the end of that, as they exit, to help them get into more permanent housing. Homeless Leadership Alliance, they're involved. They're going to evaluate clients that are referred from various services, from various referrals, and they'll evaluate needs and what funds need to be spent to assist those folks. And then lastly, St. Vincent de Paul Community Kitchen Resource Center. They're going to use the funds for needs assessment and housing assistance, such as rent and utility payment assistance. So, we do have rent assistance with the county, and we all know that. It's a program that they have. They spent a ton of money. That funding actually looks like it's going to run through in August, right around there. It's possible they could get another allocation, but really the intent here is to try to get this funding out to people that need rent assistance more quickly. The county's doing a great job, so what I'm going to say is not criticizing them, but there are rules they need to follow, and it takes them quite a while from someone that opens up and starts typing into an application to when they get a rent check. It takes a while. Again, I think they're doing a fantastic job. The criticism is there because people don't really understand the steps they need to go through. But under this program, we're able to get people a little bit more quickly, kind of in a triage kind of thing. So that's why I think this is still useful, even though those funds are out there with the county ERA program, Emergency Rental Assistance Program. All right. Let's see. So that's the home art portion of this. And as I mentioned at the top, we also use this opportunity to reprogram CDBG funding. Okay, so existing current year programs. And really at the top, what you see there is Hope Villages of America. They submitted a public facilities application to expand Grace House and add units. That project's not going to happen. Okay, so that's $98,000 that we can take from that project and redistribute. So that's a starting point for us. So what we did is we created a new project. We talked about it a little bit last week. I saw a presentation on it. Clearwater, our Ross Norton Recreation Center in Lake Bellevue, they're going to put a recreation pier out into that lake. There actually was one there a number of years ago. I never saw it. It was before my time. But I think this will be a really good feature. Encourage people to recreate outside, which is also a COVID response kind of thing. As you all know, we bought the Elks Lodge in North Greenwood, and with that we budgeted demo costs. I vastly underestimated the demo costs. The asbestos issues there really drove up that cost. So we're going to use CDBG money to cover what we didn't budget with general funds. And that's certainly an eligible cost of CDBG. PERC, what we did is we had two public service programs that we determined weren't going to spend all of their funds. So we're reducing their contracts, as you can see by these amounts. Gulf Coast Legal Services has run through their funds. We're going to increase their contract by that amount, by $10,000. And then we still have a little bit of a balance left over for any other programs that run through their money that might need a little extra money towards the end of the fiscal year. So that $5,900 gives us a little flexibility to help these public service providers, and that keeps us under our 15% cap that we talked about a little bit ago. Had a couple of public facilities projects that came in over budget, which is no surprise in this construction climate. So we're increasing those contracts. We have one or two more that still need to complete the bid process, should be very shortly. So we've reserved a little bit more money for any cost overruns there as well. So that's the CDBG picture. That's reprogramming of existing current year CDBG funds. We talked about home ARP. That concludes my presentation, so I'll take any questions.
I just had a question about the Elks Lodge. What is the plan with that after you guys demoed it? Do you guys have a?
Well, we, as you know, we're starting a community redevelopment agency area in the North Greenwood area. And with that, there's going to be a dedicated funding source. It's tax increment financing. And we put a plan together, a special area plan for that area. So we envision this acquisition to be strategic. And that, we'll probably, when that CRA is created, probably a year from now, we'll probably transfer that property to the CRA. That'll give, the CRA has more flexibility in repurposing that property than the city does. We have rules that really tighten what we're able to do. CRA has more flexibility. So it's a commercially zoned property. It's right in the middle of that commercial corridor. So we really envision a commercial project that, that really kind of livens that commercial corridor. Right now it's a little bit of a dead zone. So hopefully we can get some activity going. That commercial corridor is only about a third of a mile long. If we have one or two victories, we can really change, move the needle on it, So the answer to your question is, I don't know what that project is, but I think I've explained what we're trying to achieve.
Probably like a retail at the street level and then maybe affordable housing.
Yeah,
upstairs
a mixed use would be great, It's, it's a food desert. I hear the term farmer's market. That's a neat term. I think that would be kind of cool.
Right.
We've got to find the right partner because we're not going to run a farmer's market. That's not what we do as a city or a CRA.
Right.
So we got to find a partner to run that on the private side, and it's kind of exciting. We have a couple of commercial opportunities on that street that are city-owned properties. So when that CRA gets going, we could really kind of, get things started.
Absolutely. Any other questions or comments for Chuck? Does anyone from the public wish to comment on this item? Okay. May I have a motion to approve 4.2?
I'll set the motion. I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, motion carries. 4.3 is provide feedback to the board chair in preparation of the chair's presentation to City Council on behalf of the NAHAB. Ms. Elaine, do you want to get us started on this discussion?
Yes, and this is a discussion for you all to have. We talked about a little bit 2 meetings ago, and you asked me to agenda it at the next meeting, and we talked about that meeting being the presentation, so we kicked it one more meeting back. So I think, that discussion, it's clear that we kind of all share the excitement as to what this board's trying to accomplish. There's a lot of things you want to do, and that's terrific. I think Ms. Hebding's presentation to council can include, the board's, hopeful next steps, what they want to accomplish, which I think needs to be part of the presentation. But I think the presentation needs to be mostly about the activities that the board has undertaken. It's a report to council about what this board has achieved, what you've done, where you're at, how the board's evolved. I think Ms. Hebding, if you all remember, and I watched tape the other day, so I have a little bit of an advantage in remembering it. She really brought the discussion, I thought, into the perfect perspective, and she kind of outlined, 4 bullet points that that her presentation should be, in her eyes. One being recap last year, 2021, among the challenges that we had. The evolution of the board. I think that's a good discussion to let council know. A plan for what we're trying to accomplish. Some of the things that we talked about at that meeting, and I know Mr. Scalia led that discussion about having that community meeting, the symposium, whatever we call it. That may be something that you want to let council know is in your headlights. It's something you want to do. And then lastly, the board's role. The board's role and how it relates to city council. What that connection is. So I think I think you made some great points in laying that out, Ms. Hepting. So I'll leave it to you all to talk through it. There's no deadline on this. I think we want to do it while Ms. Hepting is still chair, and she's chair until January. But we can agenda this one or two more times if we need to. That's, whatever pace we need to go. But I think by the end of the year, we're going to want to, I think the board's going to want to, at least have that presentation. And it'll give us kind of a framework that we can do this annually. So I'll kick it back to Ms. Hepting. And I'm here to support you any way you need it.
Thank you. Yeah, I think we want to be strategic when it comes to planning that conversation with council, because obviously we're not going to present to them a number of times. It's something that we're going to want to do probably once a year or once every other year, just to kind of give them an update. And we have to assume that the 5 people on the city council don't have time to watch all our tapes or come and attend our meetings. So I think it would be nice to give them kind of like a recap, like you mentioned. And then just talk about kind of some of the things that we're hopeful for and we're hopeful to be able to accomplish. And then really making sure that they know what we're going to lean on them for, and what are the things that we think we can accomplish as a board, so that they have a good understanding of what kind of like our objectives are. So if you have any feedback for that presentation, now is the time to kind of talk about it. And then I think what we'll do, the process will I'll probably draft something to review with you, Chuck, and then before we schedule that presentation.
Okay.
So if there's anything else, if you guys are good with those 4, recapping last year, talking about the board and the evolution, and then talking about what we plan to accomplish, talk about that event that we want to have at some point in the future, that we want it to be a recurring event, and then discussing that, what's our role, what's the city council role, what do we kind of expect from them, and what they can expect from us in return. Good? Yeah.
No, I think you're right. I think it's a plan going forward, and maybe we talk about it 1 or 2 more times, but once you present to the council, I'd like to have a pretty concise idea of what we're trying to do and the information we're trying to give them. I was at a meeting last night where there's certainly some transition going on now in the city government in respect to homelessness and affordable housing. And what I mean by that is I think that we're looking at things from a different perspective now. And I'm encouraged by what I saw last night. That was the meeting to actually replace the cop lot. Is going to be going out, but it was, we had a lot of the providers, about 13 or 14 different providers we had, but also we had a couple of members of the council, the city manager, the mayor, the chief of police, and something has to change because the cop lot's going. And last night, for the first time in 13 years that I can remember, everybody in the room agreed we have to now change the way we're doing things. It was a consensus, and that's the first time I've seen that. So I'm very hopeful now that we're going to move forward on some ideas to fix homelessness.
I'm sorry, you said the cop lot?
I'm sorry.
The police lot is over
The cop lot.
Oh.
The city-owned lot that we.
It's actually the parking lot. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the lot at Pearson Myrtle, the vacant lot, okay.
They do feedings at night there.
Okay.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I thought that was a common term.
The city has made it available for those feedings. We haven't run those
That's your
feedings.
nickname.
We've made it available for ministries to feed on.
And what is the term, cop lot?
Cop lot.
Pop as in police. Yeah.
I'm sorry.
That's a good
It's
question.
across the street from the police station.
Well, I guess last night the city manager told us that the proper terminology would be the future site of the city hall. Okay.
Okay.
I like the direction that we're taking it, but also with the understanding that by title of our organization, the board, puts us in a very problematic situation with today's economy of Neighborhood Affordable Housing Advisory Board. It is very difficult right now for us to even envision a neighborhood affordable housing in Clearwater, just because affordable housing is a difficult thing to come by. So, not that it's something we can't do, but I think in our conversations with the board, we need to recognize that the challenges in front of us are extreme at this point with today's economy.
And getting more extreme.
Yes.
Chuck, can I ask you a question? And I don't know how this will reflect. Is there any discussion at the county, density?
Yep.
The density issue always comes up. Is there any talk anywhere? Is that being addressed? Is anybody looking at and saying we need to change some of the density laws somewhere around here?
You mean to increase densities?
Yes.
Really where you're going, yeah. It's interesting because, we have a US 19 plan, and you've seen a lot of the housing go up on US 19 in Clearwater, right? No one's building to the densities, so increasing density probably isn't the trick there, and then in your downtown, the same thing. One of the things about density and construction of affordable housing, or any housing for that matter, when you get denser than about 35 units an acre, you need to build structured parking. And that completely and totally changes your financial outlook on that project. So people avoid that. They stay south of that, so they don't have to take on that expense, take on that risk. So most of our densities in downtown allow that much, but people are reluctant to go there. Now we can help. The Washington Street property, we use CRA funding to help build that structured parking, but we can't do that on every project. It's a huge, huge expense. So going through the CRA planning process in the North Greenwood, now we're talking about maybe an opportunity to talk about densities, because we don't have the 35 units an acre. There's a lot of low to medium residential zoned areas that we might be able to have that discussion, and I think we should. So there's certain areas of the city I think it could make a difference. There's other areas in the city where it probably won't make any difference at all. And I think the CRA plan that we're creating, I think that's a good place to kind of focus on that. And that's my job, and part of the team that's going through that to make sure that that's considered, and I will do that.
I'm done.
I like that.
Yeah, I mean, you don't see a lot of single-family homes being built anymore. It's
Right.
a lot of the multifamily
Right.
stuff. So, do we need to shift? And North Greenwood CRA is an opportunity to really evaluate that. So.
Well, and it ties back in with something else that's always attached to affordable housing, and it's public transportation, which is another huge issue that we have. And we're obviously not the only one, it's an entire county. And because of how everything works, where PSTA being the provider or whatever the name is called for their agency, and it's not a city specific. So that's also those conversations that we run into where we say, it's nice to have those conversations with these people, but it's also, just because the city of Clearwater wants to, make their public transportation better, it doesn't happen like that. It's a much bigger conversation, because you can't expect people to come live down here unless they can walk to work, or they can work from home, or whatever the situation is, unless you have, options for them. If you build an apartment complex that doesn't have parking, chances are you're not going to fill those units, because people have cars still. I mean, they rely on cars still a lot.
Yeah, affordable housing and transportation very much connected. You can't separate the two. Did you have something you wanted to?
Yeah, Clearwater 20.
Yeah. Well, she asked me to mention Clearwater 2045, and that's us opening up our community development code to, make the changes we need to make and update that, those guidelines, and that, we call that Clearwater 2045. So that's another opportunity to look at densities, look at some of the things that are in that code that are difficult, prohibitive. The first thing that comes to my mind, and everybody knows it's a difficult process, is corner lots. Corner lots for single-family homes. You have two front setbacks. Front setbacks are bigger than side setbacks, and when you have two front setbacks, now you can build a home that's about 10 by 30, and I'm joking. So you need flexibility to reduce that other setback. There's certain residential zoning districts that require a level 2 approval, which takes 2.5 months, when we know as staff it's going to get approved, but it's just a burden that's built into our code, and that's something that we can change through that amendment. That's just an example. ADUs are something that we'll be looking at through that code. Densities are something we can certainly address and look at as we go through that process. Anything else to add? Thank you.
Good conversation. Good conversation. Okay. All right, so I guess I'll come back to this board with a little more detail of an idea, and then we'll rediscuss. Awesome. All right, item 5 is Director's Report. Chuck, that's you again.
Yeah.
It's the Chuck Show today.
Couple things. So I mentioned earlier we're going through our annual action planning process. I think not too long after that, we'll probably amend our CDBG CV plan to make some changes there. I think we're going to need a substantial amendment to include some public facilities projects. So more to come on that. Very important, I think, in the public forum, it's a good opportunity to mention this. We're having 4 meetings coming up that are very important. These meetings were initially created to get public input on us as a city in establishing our strategic direction, and that's still going to be the case. We're also going to add a discussion in each of those meetings on our plans to spend ARPA funds. We have $22.5 million that's been allocated to us, and everybody knows the acronym. Unusually, that's not normal for people to know our acronyms, but everybody knows what ARPA is, and that's a good pot of money that we have, the American Rescue Plan Act. And so, gotta come out of the closet. Now everybody knows. Okay. And we've gotten a lot of public discussion. We've had people talk to us about what they think this fund should be spent on. Very few restrictions. Affordable housing's on the table, community development programs, and also internal spends. One of the things is utility infrastructure. We have a huge amount of money in our utility infrastructure in Clearwater, so that's considered too. So that's being led by the city manager, but we're going to get public input at these 4 meetings, and those 4 meetings they all begin at 6 p.m. Monday, May 16th at Morningside Recreation Center. That's 2400 Harn Boulevard. Tuesday, May 24th at our North Greenwood Recreation Center. That's 900 North Martin Luther King Jr. Avenue. Tuesday, May 31st at our Clearwater Beach Recreation Center. That's 69 Bay Esplanade. And then the last one is the following day, Wednesday, June 1st at our Countryside Library, and that's 2642 Sable Springs Drive. So I would encourage anybody interested, and you all as well, in how we allocate those funds, and also to give us input on our strategic direction, to attend those meetings, or one of those meetings anyway.
Absolutely.
Chuck, could you send that out in an email?
I'll send those dates and times out.
Thank you.
That'd be great, yeah.
Yep.
Everybody should be encouraging their neighbors and friends to attend these for sure.
Yeah. So a while back I told you, and we began doing it. We began bringing a presenter, kind of off-topic presenter, to each meeting. I didn't do that at this meeting. Kind of snuck up on me. But I'll try to get back to that. If you have any suggestions on who might be a good presenter for this board, let me know. You can let me know now, or you can shoot me an email. But I want to keep doing that. I want to keep exposing this board to things that we don't typically talk about that are related to the work that you do. So I think it helped you all. It helps us, and it helps whoever's presenting too, that group as well, get some exposure. So
I would love to hear from someone that is in the public transportation area, just as it relates to affordable housing. since we're on that topic.
Okay,
Especially if we can have kind of like an interactive discussion about, you know, what is it that we can do as a board to help whatever they are doing, you know, to just help getting that infrastructure to grow and support
okay.
what our region needs.
Chuck, is there a counterpart to our board at the county level?
Yes. Required.
Who are they? I mean,
I don't know, we can find out.
what would the possibility be of us meeting with them? I mean, we're here, we're the city, but they're the county. We must share all of the same concerns, yes?
Yeah, yeah.
Is there any way we could all get, I mean, I don't know what the sunshine laws and stuff are. Is there any way we could all get together and sit down and say, what are you guys doing at the county? And this is what we're trying to do here. And maybe that could open up some, I don't know, lines of communication that gets us all on the same page.
Yeah, I'll look
Not
into
even
that.
just the county adding City of Largo into that, St. Petersburg. Again, that comes to our bringing everybody together to get on the same
That
page
might be
with
the
these
type of,
programs.
I keep coming back to the term symposium, but that might be the way, that group is everybody who's on all of these various boards at city and county levels. Let's get us all in the same room and say, what are you doing? What do you think? How about this? Here's an idea. Does that make sense? I mean,
Yeah, the first Thursday of every month, I facilitate a jurisdictions meeting. So it's a meeting of all the entitlement communities in Clearwater, in Pinellas County. It's us, it's people from Pinellas County, Largo, Pinellas Park, St. Pete. There are also others on the call, some nonprofit organizations. HLA usually participates, communities, Pinellas Community Foundation, and there are others, JWB. But it's really just, it was always intended to be a discussion to kind of talk through what we're doing, and so we're all on the same page. We all know what the others are doing, and it's very helpful for everybody on the call. So that's something we do every Thursday, and that's I can raise that question at our next meeting, and that would be first Thursday in June, whatever that is, June. I don't know, I have a calendar in front of me.
Second, I think.
But I can certainly, yeah, thank you. I can certainly raise that and talk about it and see if there's, see if there's any interest among the other jurisdictions. Be a good place to start. And I'll check into who might be good for us to bring in and talk about transportation.
Okay, sounds good.
On
That's
the
all I have.
transportation issue, Chuck, I'm attending the local coordinating board meeting next week. So after that meeting, I might just send you some suggestions.
Terrific.
Because that's the transportation coordinating board.
Yeah, terrific. The first person that comes to my mind is Whit Blanton. I don't know that he's a pretty busy guy.
Yeah, and he,
So this might be good to list you in.
right.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
So I'll just kind of gauge as to who's involved and who may be able to provide some good feedback for us.
Okay, good.
I was at a meeting a few months ago. We had a speaker from Forward Pinellas who spoke about transportation.
Yep.
So I can't remember her name, but I can get that.
Probably.
Board
Sarah.
Pinellas is involved in
Yeah.
this coordinating board too.
Good.
So,
And because they're behind the planning for transportation, I think they would probably have the best insight as to, where do we even start kind of deal. Yeah. Okay.
That's good
Excellent.
stuff. That's all I have, unless you have any more questions for me.
Any questions for Chuck?
Thank you all.
Thank you. Item 6 is board members to be heard. I'll start to my right for comments. No comments?
yeah, the only thing I wanted to at least mention today was some time ago, probably about 8 weeks ago, Chuck sent us all a letter from a concerned citizen. And I just wanted to open it up to the board as to whether anybody had any comments or felt like they wanted to have that conversation among us. She raised some good issues we all are talking about already. But I just wanted to open that up to us as a reminder that did come to us.
recall much of the letter, but I know that it's complicated when you are a citizen of a city and you see, I mean, we were just talking about all those numbers, right? All those numbers that look like giant dollar amounts that really have to be distributed to so many different partners so that it can actually trickle down to the people that need it most. And like you were saying, at the end of the day, when you have 8 applications and you only have 100,000 or 108,000 to distribute, it obviously makes that number a lot smaller. I think the opportunity that we need to communicate to that particular citizen and any that, you know, have that same concern is those meetings that you mentioned about those ARPA funds that are going to be spent, because that is a very large pot of money that can make a very big difference. And all we're asking the citizens is to come to those meetings and actually share with us what they think and what they want to see and what they may have ideas for. I think as long as we make sure that this person and in general that the general public knows about these meetings and know that it is the place to go more than, you know, we are, or even you are, Chuck, you know, the person to go to and ask those questions. Those are the kind of meetings that are important, and they happen more often than some people even think. I mean, there's always a public meeting happening for something. I mean, they were doing the Drew Street conversation. There was the CRA conversation in North Greenwood. Those things happen all the time, and people don't always attend and then say, well, where am I supposed to give my feedback?
Well,
So I think
especially
we can push
since
it.
part of her initial thought was a wrapping around the ARPA funds. That is you're right, that is the forum that conversation that she's looking to have needs to be at.
So that letter, I was impressed by that letter. And she raised a lot of questions, and rather than writing a detailed response, I asked her to meet with me, and she was happy to do that, and we sat down for better than an hour. And I answered a lot of the questions that she had and helped her understand, you know, our landscape. She's a business owner in North Greenwood. She owns a small daycare. Very plugged in, very respectful. I enjoyed speaking with her. She is plugged into those meetings that I mentioned. She was in a group that came to City Council at our last council meeting, and they were asking council for public feedback. They said, look, with the public, we want to be engaged in the decisions that you make regarding the ARPA funds. And prior to that meeting, that schedule I gave you had come out. So I think they were all pleased that was going to happen. But she was at that meeting. I've seen her a couple of times even since I met with her. I think she'd be, you know, a great addition to this board if there was ever a seat that you know, was appropriate. You know, and she knows she can call me with any questions, you know, and if there's anything you want me to convey to her, you can let me know. You can shoot me an email. You know, if you have a chance to reread the letter and there's anything you want to bring forward, I can talk with her again. But I'm sure it's not the last time I'll speak with her. You know, she's very engaged. So thanks for bringing that up, Mr. Shalom.
I've said this before, and I'll say it again. There is so much good work done by so many departments in this city. The police department, what you guys do, there's great work done. And whoever is in charge of the PR for the city sucks. They need to get this message out there. Look at what we're doing. And there are good things happening, and they're just not very good at their job. If there's somebody who does that, they're not very good.
Well, I would disagree with that. I think they do well. I think, you know, they get their information from us, so maybe some of that's on us, that we could do a better job at what they need to distribute. So I think our public communications department does a terrific job. We don't need to debate that piece. I do want to shout out for them. I think they do very well.
And I will add that that's also our role. I mean, we're volunteering for this board and we're volunteering for about an hour to an hour and a half once a month. The truth is, this is also why we're here. We're here to, once we're done with this meeting, to go out into our little community, whoever our circle of influence is, and say, did you know these meetings were happening? Are you attending these meetings? Did you hear, you know, what we're spending this money on? Did you hear about this new affordable housing development that's happening here and there? That's also what our role is. And I think it's very hard, and I'm in marketing, so I know what it's like to have the person turn around to you and say, well, where's all the stuff, right? So it's we all are part of this. I think we should all kind of push it more.
I agree. I just did this last night, and it was like bringing up things that have happened. It's
Yeah.
like you see eyes open, like, I never heard that. I never heard that.
Yeah.
Where is this?
There's also truth to the fact that the negative reviews are much louder than the positive reviews. So you have to think about it that way. You hear a lot of the things that people are not happy about. It's very seldom that you hear somebody say, oh, by the way, let me take the time to say out loud that I had a great experience with XYZ. So, it's also that part of that.
And unfortunately, a good portion of our citizens are not caring and don't want to learn and don't want to hear. So they disengage. So the hard part of marketing is getting them to engage.
People like to engage when they have, a negative reaction to
Yeah,
something.
yeah.
It's the way it is. It's
Yeah.
like the cable company, right? They don't call you to tell you that I watched a great movie last night. It's my cable's not working.
Right.
What's wrong with you people?
Right.
That's kind of where we're at.
Right.
Yeah, but there's a lot of good done, and it wouldn't hurt to send that out once in a while. Somebody somewhere saying, hey, look what is happening.
Following us on Facebook or Nextdoor?
I don't do any social media. I stay off social media.
Well, this is why you don't see it.
Disengaged.
It's always on, I see everything on LinkedIn, I see everything on Facebook, you gotta follow, so you get to see it. I'll send it to you.
Maybe you're the one I was just talking about, disengaging.
Yeah, maybe I'm just wrong on this one.
We had talked when I first started the board that at one time you guys kind of took a trolley around and visited these different locations and saw the good projects and just the projects that this board has approved and done. Is that something that I know COVID, and when we first started, we weren't doing it.
That's absolutely.
But I thought that would be very beneficial. I mean, even for myself, I was still talking about projects and I don't quite, I want to see them.
Yeah, that was a great tour. We did that a few years back.
Yeah.
And we talked about doing it again when we ran through the pandemic. So I'll try to work on that. I think it'd probably be better to do it in the cooler months. We get an open air trolley and,
In the fall.
yeah, more certain we're gonna,
Yeah, I was gonna say, not here.
we'll be more certain of good weather. And then we'll maybe schedule that November, December. I think we did it in January the last time we did it. But yeah, I think we ran through that and I think everybody was like, wow, I didn't know we did all that, which was kind of cool, and that's the purpose for it. I think, Mr. Scalia, after that meeting, you had mentioned, maybe we should have a reporter from the Times.
Yes.
up
Yeah.
there.
Maybe we have a media person come with us on that.
Maybe, and I would run that by our powers that be, make sure they're comfortable with that, but I thought that was a good suggestion. It needs to be a public meeting, oddly.
Right.
Which is, you can only fit so many people on a bus, but, we don't
Yeah.
pack it in, so. I'll work on that. I'll try to target something for late this year or January, but we'll do
Okay.
that again.
Awesome. Anything else from the board members? I know we didn't get past. Do you have any additional comments, Pete?
No, I'm done. I'm sorry.
Okay.
You already did it.
Lindsay? Yeah. Here you said his negative comments. My goodness. I'll guess so. Okay. Excellent. Making sure we don't have anything else left. All right, our next NAHAB meeting is scheduled for Tuesday, June 14th, right here at 9 a.m. in council chambers. And we are adjourned.
Thank you, everybody.